Okay, first you want to make sure that you spray all the dirt off your bike, especially this area right here. This is your oil cap where you put oil into your bike, and you want to make sure you get all the dirt. And you can see this is already clean. We're going to clean it again just to make sure. Okay, so let's clean it. And usually I go ahead and just spray down the entire motorbike just to make sure, because you're going to touch the bike in different places when you're changing the oil, and you want to make sure you don't get any of that dirt in the oil so it doesn't go back in your engine. Okay, I want to show you something. This is the underside of the bike, and that's the oil screw. I hope you can see it. And you want to make sure you get rid of all this dirt, because dirt just has a way of getting everywhere, especially when you have oily fingers. Okay, we got the bike washed off. I want to make a point here. There's another reason to wash your bike, and it's because these bikes are meant to be ridden off-road. They bounce around a lot. Rocks bounce up off the road or off the gravel, hit the bottom of the engine. And if you clean your engine after you're finished using the bike, then you can see if there's an oil leak somewhere or some other type of fluids leaking out. And that's just part of proper maintenance. You just take care of your stuff, and that way, if you wash it off and you see a spot that reappears after another day or so, then you know there's an oil leak somewhere, so it lets you spot it. But if this whole bottom side of the engine is caked up with dirt and there happens to be an oil leak, then you may have a problem and not realize it, and the next time you go out riding, it may break down on you. So always try and take care of your bike. So for the oil change today, we're going to need, this is a Chinese bike, so it's metric. We're going to need a 17mm socket. So we got that. I always keep some paper towel. You're going to get oily. It's inevitable. So keep some paper towel to wipe your hands on. You need an oil pan. I have a piece of paper here that's underneath the main part of the engine. So any oil that happens to leak out that doesn't hit the oil pan will get on the paper. I keep an old towel all the time so that I can lay on it. Here's the oil that we need. We need the, let me find the other one. We need 10W40. And keep in mind, this is motorbike oil. This is not car oil. If you notice, there's a picture of a motorbike on here. So make sure if you go buy the oil that you get motorbike oil. And Castrol is really good oil. I've used it for a long time. This is a part synthetic motorbike oil. I'll put a link to this oil. You can buy it on Amazon. I'll put a link to it in the description. So let's get started. Okay. All right, I got my motor oil. I got my drain pan. Here's our plug. 17mm socket. So let's take this off. I've actually loosened it up already. When these are put on at the factory, sometimes they're really tough to loosen, so I had to really put some pressure on it, so I didn't turn the camera on and record. So get it loose with your socket and then finish removing it with your fingers. And don't be afraid to get a little oily. You can wash it off. And I like this type of drain pan because if you use an open container and you take this bolt out, the bolt may fall into the container, and then you'll have to get your entire hand oily to get it out. So I like this. This drain pan has a grid here, so the oil can drain into the hole, but there's a grid that the bolt won't go through. So you're sure you're not going to have to reach your hand down there and submerge your hand. And notice, you still get greasy. You're going to get greasy, it's inevitable. So I'm going to set my bolt right here. Wipe my hands off. Let all your oil drain out. While that's draining, I want to make a point. Most places that do oil changes, like all the quick oil lube places, Walmart, Firestone, any of those places, they take used oil. So when you drain your oil out of your motorbike, or if you're doing an oil change on your car or some other piece of equipment, you can take this container of oil to them, and they will take it free of charge. They won't charge you to take your old oil, so you don't have to leave it in your yard or your garage or pollute your area with it. You just take it up there and tell them you have oil. They'll let you walk right up to the the place where you can, they have a big container. I forget what it's called, but you can take this container and essentially dump it in. And if you notice, this container has a plug right here, so you can unscrew this and just empty this straight into their big vat of oil. All right, so I'm going to wipe off my bolt here. Now I'm going to stand up for a second. I'm going to lean the bike upward. Right now the bike's on the kickstand. I'm going to lean it up so that the rest of the oil will drain out of the engine. And it takes about 3 minutes for this all your oil to come out. Okay, so while your oil is draining, you can take your oil cap off, unscrew it and remove it. You don't have to do this, but I always do it just to make sure there's a clear air path from here all the way down to the plug in the bottom. Okay, so my helper here said, why didn't I put this oil pan with the grid directly under the hole the oil comes out of? There's a grid in one corner, there's a hole with a grid over it. And she said, why didn't I just put this hole in the grid directly underneath this hole right here? And the reason is, sometimes, I'm used to changing oil in a vehicle, sometimes when the oil comes out, it doesn't just drain straight down, it actually comes out at an angle if it's under pressure. I've got a bug in my face. Anyhow, as long as I get it anywhere in the center of this oil pan, I'm okay. I can clean this up with no problem, so that's why. Okay, we're going to put the plug back in. All right, I'm going to move my oil pan out of the way. We're done with it. And now I always wipe off the bottom of the engine really good, because I want to make sure it's clean so that when I'm done with the oil change and I drive it, I'm going to look down here again, and if there's any oil on it, then I'll know there's a leak somewhere. So let's tighten it back up. Don't over tighten this. A lot of people will just pull on their ratchet as hard as they can. If you over tighten it, you're going to damage the body of the engine. And if you damage this, you might as well buy a new motorbike, because it costs enough to replace this that you know, you're, by the time you pay all the mechanics fees and parts fees, you know, you will have paid for a new motorbike. So don't over tighten it. Just good and snug is all you need. Make sure it's really clean. Okay, so we're ready to put our oil back in. So you can buy this at Walmart. It's just a real simple funnel. It costs about $1. I want to show you something. Come around here a little bit closer. This oil filler cap goes in right here, okay? If you notice, on the cap, or on the stick here, there's some little ridges. The proper way to check your oil is to put the cap down in like that. You don't have to screw it in. A lot of people think they have to screw it in to get a correct reading. You don't. You just put your cap in, pull it back out, and you see how much oil, where your oil is. Your oil, when it's full, should be right there to the very top. So you just put your oil in, you put this in just like that, you wait a second, and then you pull it back out, and you see if oil is on your cap or on your stick. So first you clean your stick. Make sure this is really clean. If you lay this on the ground, clean it off before you put it in. You don't want any trash to get into your oil. There is no oil filter on this bike. Most of these bikes don't have an oil filter, so if you have trash on this oil stick and you put it in there, you're going to put trash into your engine. And if you see this area is really clean, you don't want any dirt from here to get down into that hole. If it does, you're going to have a big problem. So let's put our oil in. So we're going to put our funnel in just like that. Now for this bike, you notice I've got 2 quarts of oil. This bike takes 1.1 quart. So it takes 1 entire quart and 1/10 of another quart. These things are tough to open. And go slow when you're putting your oil in. There's no reason to rush. Now I've noticed, actually a mechanic told me this. He said not all of these bikes are identical, even though they have the same motor. There are some slight variances. So even though the specs say 1.1 quart, we're gonna actually test it. I'm gonna see what the oil stick says before I put part of that second quart in. Okay, so you put your stick in just like that. You don't screw it in. Count to about 3 or 4. Pull it back out and look at it and see where your oil is. So our oil is almost to the top. You can see it right there. It's very close to the top. So I'm going to take a second reading. I always read this twice. Come down a little bit closer to me. All right, so let's put it back in there. You know, they could have made this oil plug poke out this way so you wouldn't have to fight this bar to get this stick out. So let's pull the stick back out. Look at it again, okay? It looks like it's full. All right, so as long as it's really close to the top, you're fine. You don't have to put more oil in it. If it was like 2/3 from the top, I'm sorry, 2/3 up the stick, then you would put more oil in. But as long as it's right up to this point, you're in good shape. So I'm not gonna put any more oil in this. I'm gonna run it and then I'm gonna check it again after it runs for about an hour. All right, so let's put this in. This is the same as the bolt on the bottom. I'm going to give you the same advice. Don't over tighten it. Always wipe it off good. Make sure that you got all your excess oil off. So after you ride it for a few minutes, if there's a leak, then you'll see oil here. But I think we're in good shape. So that should be it. Since I'm changing the oil, I wanted to take just a minute and tell you a quick story. I was at an oil change place the other day, and this lady was at the counter in front of me, and the guy at the counter, she was telling him about her engine, and she was asking a couple of questions, and he just really gave her the minimum amount of information back. So while they were talking, she said, "Hey, I'm going to go on a long trip in a couple of days, so put in some extra oil just to make sure I have enough." And that made me cringe. I said, "Wait a minute, that's not right. That guy should tell her that you don't need extra oil." But he said, "Okay, ma'am, it's no problem. We'll make sure you have plenty of oil." What he should have said is, "Hey, look," he should have taken that as a learning moment and said, "Look, you don't need extra oil. If you notice, you don't ever put oil in your car. It's not like gasoline. When you go to the gas pump and you fill up your bike or you fill up your car, you only fill it up when you run out. Oil's not like that. Whatever oil you put in your engine stays there until you change it. You don't use up oil. So there's no reason to put extra oil in." The filler cap, or this cap right here, where you put your oil in, that has the marks on it, and those marks tell you exactly how much oil you're supposed to have. And you know, you don't have to be exactly precise, but you need to be really, really close. So you need to be to the top of the marks when you fill up your engine with oil. You need the right amount. You don't want less oil, you don't want more oil, you want just the right amount. And that's like that whether you're talking about a car or a bike or some sort of ATV. Always put in the right amount of oil. Always keep an extra quart of oil. Whenever I go buy oil, I don't just buy one, I buy two. Make sure you have extra. And if you're on a ride where you're off-road and you're going to be in rugged terrain where rocks or roots or whatever could hit the bottom of your motorbike, you know, there is potential for the bottom of the motorbike to get damaged. And remember, this oil bolt right there, I hope you can see it, is exposed. A lot of these SSR motorbikes don't have a plate that covers the bottom of the engine. So you want to make sure, you want to check it frequently to make sure it's okay and that nothing's busted. And you want to have extra oil to replace it. So I recommend if you're going to go out on a ride, you check it before you ride, check it at least once during the ride, check it after the ride. Just be aware if you see oil anywhere on the bike, it shouldn't be there. You can have mud on the bike, water, whatever, but you can't have oil on the bike. So if you see oil somewhere, stop and check it. And always take extra oil, your funnel, and your wrench when you go out on a ride. Make sure you have everything you need to change your oil while you're there.